What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here. So I'm going to address two questions you're probably going to have at the beginning of this video, if you are watching my videos on the regular. First of all, She-Hulk reviews. Where are they? To be perfectly honest, it's one of those I got to get motivated to go watch it. Very similar to how I felt about a lot of the CW DC shows like Supergirl, Batwoman, The Flash, Arrow. All those shows near the end of the most recent season that I watched, it was difficult for me to get excited to go watch them. That's kind of how I feel about She-Hulk. I've heard both good and bad things. I've seen a lot of memes that do not get me excited to go watch it. So I am planning on reviewing it. Just got to get around to it. And second question, why am I wearing a Superman shirt when this is a Black Panther review? I don't know. I wanted something with longer sleeves because it's getting chilly in the house, and I just saw this. I'm like, sure, superhero, right? It makes sense, kind of. But anyways, this is Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I'm going to be doing my typical talking non-spoilers first and then going into more spoilers later on. I will let you know if you're here for some reason and you don't want spoilers. I'll let you know whenever that change is about to happen. But first of all, my thoughts on the film without any spoilers involved. It was good. It was really good. I enjoyed a large chunk of it. Not flawless, but most films nowadays are not flawless anyway, so not really sure if anybody's expecting that. Compared to the first film, I would give the first film slightly more of an edge, and that's solely because this one falls into a lot of the same problem that I've had with a lot of the Phase 4 Marvel stuff, and that is there's this feeling of there are stories that are popping up that don't really affect the main plot. It's just mainly there to build up another story. So we've seen it a lot with a lot of these shows. I've talked about it in some of my reviews of especially the TV shows. Some of them felt like they ended without really concluding because they were building up some other story that's going to come in a later film. There's some stuff in this film that definitely feels like there was no other point other than, oh guys, get excited for this coming soon to a theater near you. And I'm not a big fan of that. I feel like the more concise and contained stories, like old school Marvel before Phase 4, yes, there were some films that were a bit more open-ended. Some of them did leave stories that were open for later films. However, they still were their own contained story, and that was it. They would leave only slight things open, and it was more of a final scene to build up for the next thing coming. Now, it seems like Marvel's more so almost telling stories that have no ending because they're going to tell the ending in another movie or show, and I'm not a big fan of it. I feel like it's fine if you're doing it for comic books because it makes sense. There's another issue coming. With these, because they're so few and far between, sometimes it's difficult to go watch a film before you go see another one, so it's hard to remember everything that's happening. With a comic book, you can just go grab this issue that happened 3 times ago and go, oh yeah, I remember this happening here. It's not as easy to, let me search this one film. Oh, this one scene, that led to this. It's a lot more convoluted. So anyways, all that to say, that is the one thing that I feel like really holds this film back from being better than the first one, because there were a lot of things in this movie that I felt like were done better than the first film. I thought the action scenes honestly looked better. The CGI in the first film was a little wonky at times. I thought this one, it was very solid throughout. The characters, very well done, although first one also had good characters, so little hard to compare the two because they're both done equally as well in my opinion. The Chadwick Boseman tribute, in my opinion, it was perfect. You couldn't have done it any better. How they handle T'Challa's death in the movie as well, I feel like really fits and flowed very well into the story. So yeah, a lot about this. I think they did a good job telling a second Black Panther story. And really, any fans of the first film, I feel like are going to come into this one and appreciate what they did to honor Chadwick Boseman's memory, but also giving us a fresh story that's sort of taking the current fate of Wakanda forward. So anyways, that's about all I have as far as my non-spoiler talk. So now, if you haven't seen the film yet, if you're waiting and you don't want any spoilers, there aren't any huge, massive plot twists that are I'm thinking No Way Home, with the Spider-Man reveal. Nothing like that in this film, but if you don't want spoilers, if you don't want to know what happens, now's the time to click off the video and then come back later. Hopefully, if anybody even watches this. All right, now we're in the spoiler talk. First, I want to address my favorite part of the film, and that is Namor. Now, obviously, Killmonger as a villain got a lot of praise, and it makes sense. I think a lot of the best Marvel villains are similar to Killmonger in that they kind of get you thinking. They have a bit of a point. You kind of understand where they're coming from. It's more how they accomplish their goals that makes them a villain. Although some online internet threads would have you believe that Killmonger was not actually the villain. The mass genocide, that's perfectly okay. We should totally do that. Wipe out all of the white people, right? Seriously, some of these online internet articles and stuff, they really don't think. They're just like, Killmonger wasn't the villain. He just wanted to help minorities. Watch the film again. He wanted to kill people who were not minorities and essentially enslave basically anybody who was not black. Is kind of what his motivations were. So yes, it was a sense of he had a point in the sense where he came from, people who looked like him, and he saw this other group of people that is where he came from that killed his father and had all this technology but wasn't willing to help him. It makes sense why he grew up essentially saying, no, that's my birthright. I'm going to take that. I'm going to help people who are also unfortunate like me. Totally get it. The mass genocide is where he becomes a villain. That's the difference between a sympathetic person that you understand and you totally agree with to somebody who you understand the motivations for, but they're a villain. And yeah, that's, anyways, my little 2 cents on that piece. But no, Namor as a follow-up villain to Killmonger, in my opinion, is different but still very similar in that he's relatable, you can understand where he's coming from, but it's his goals, it's his end game that makes him a villain and makes him obviously somebody that they need to stop. And I like how this is not something I've seen very often. I like how why he becomes a villain is kind of part of the twist. Because at first they were kind of setting it up like he's just trying to protect his turf. He's killing these innocent people, which is not okay, but he's doing it because they're trying to get in on his vibranium. They're trying to essentially find his people while they're trying to stay away from the land dwellers. And that's kind of what it seems like it's leading towards. But then after he talks to Shuri, you kind of find out, no, he was always going to attack. It was just about finding the right time. And now that he's met Wakanda, now that he sees what they have and how they can work together, now he sees as his opportunity to attack and get back and kill basically everybody up there who he sees as despicable and basically hoarders almost. And yeah, in my opinion, that's not something that's a common story. You don't often see a villain that is obviously going to be the villain, but you're not quite sure why until later on. The motivations seem like they're going one way, but then you find out, oh no, wait, that really didn't have that much to do with it. This was the real reason why they turned into a villain. It's not very common, and I like how they handled it. On top of that, Namor, the performance, the writing, it's all very compelling. He does a very good job of coming off as a compelling leader who you can see why people want to follow him. Because he makes a lot of good points, seeing that basically all of these people are trying to come to Wakanda and take their vibranium. Well, now they've discovered some in the seafloor. Well, people are going to start coming after them too. So it really makes sense why these people would look to him and see him as a leader. The whole story about the people I thought was interesting as well. The one thing that was a little off and something my girlfriend pointed out, which, yeah, it's one of those you have to suspend your disbelief, but the fact that he's the only one that grew wings on his feet is a little odd. Because everybody else, they took the fruit and they got gills. His mom drank the stuff, and for some reason that mutated him to be completely normal color, compared to what everybody else is. They're now blue, and he's also got wings on his feet. And why? Why is that? And how is he able to do both? How is he able to breathe underwater? He doesn't have gills, but he also can breathe above. There's definitely a lot of suspend your disbelief. It's a comic book film. He mutated for some reason in this way. You just kind of have to shrug your shoulders and say, okay, sure, whatever. I do kind of wonder, though, because I haven't had a chance to look it up, I do wonder what that reasoning is in the comics for Namor. But yeah, I like that story. I like how, again, the people, you can understand why they're willing to go to battle for him, why they're willing to fight for their land because of where they came from, basically being enslaved by these conquistadors. It makes sense. And so it's, again, it gives you a compelling reason to not want to just fully hate the villains. Like, you have a reason to feel bad for them and want to see them come to that peaceful resolution at the end. So yeah, I really appreciate when Marvel can do that with their villains instead of just making them, like your, what's his name, Ronin. Your Ronins that are essentially just, I'm power hungry and I want to kill people and I want to rule. If you have a villain that's a little bit more depth to them, I guess it does help to drive the story forward. On to sort of the main plot with Shuri, dealing with that, and then of course also trying to figure out what's going to happen with Wakanda, with the Queen taking over. I can't remember her name now, though. It's going to bug me because I'm terrible with names, and her name for some reason is not sticking to my head. I just remember her as, Shuri's mom. But yeah, I thought their story a little predictable. I kind of expected whenever Shuri was being set up as kind of the main character, and it definitely felt like she was sort of heading down a similar path as T'Challa started on. It kind of made sense for them to kill the mom off, and that can be like T'Challa's dad getting killed off. I don't know. I saw it, and I'm thinking that's probably what they're going to do, and so when they did it, it made sense, especially with them sort of leading Shuri maybe a bit down a darker path with the idea of, it seems like she wants to just kill everybody. It makes sense to have Namor kill her mom, because then she's got to decide, am I going to be just like him? Am I going to be just like Killmonger? Or am I going to rise above that and be a hero? So I appreciated what they did there, even if it was a little bit predictable. It made sense in the confines of the story. Shuri as a character, not quite as strong as T'Challa yet, but I can see where she can get stronger. I can see where they can build her character up and make her just as compelling as T'Challa was. The story with her and the fruit, the Black Panther fruit, I like that. I like how, we take something from the first movie, Killmonger burning all of those herbs, and now that becomes a big talking point whenever T'Challa comes down with an illness that is put him on his deathbed, and she can't replicate it. And so now it's kind of that balancing of, she's always in the lab, she sees all this science, whereas the herb fruit and everything to do with the Black Panther, everything to do with Wakanda, it's much more faith-based. It's much more, based on their histories and all of that. It's very different for her, and it's something that she has to grow accustomed to. By the end of it, it's still kind of up in the air, and that's why I think they have a little bit more building to do for her before her character really gets fleshed out, because you're still not really sure, is she more trusting in the science or more trusting in the Wakandan faith? It's difficult. You're not really sure where she leaves off on, and I feel like that's hopefully what they're leaving open. And I do wonder, before Chadwick Boseman passed away, I wonder if this is kind of the story they were planning to take with Shuri. Would she maybe have even gone more towards kind of wiping everybody out of, I think it was Talocan, I think is the name of the city. Was she maybe going down that path more with T'Challa sort of being the voice of reason to step in and say, no, we need to hold back from that? Maybe. And I do see where the story could have easily been similar, with maybe M'Baku taking over that role as the older brother, sort of helping her. But now she takes center stage as the main character instead. Now we see a lot more the struggles that she's going through, rather than maybe seeing it from the outside, from T'Challa's point of view. So it does beg the question, what were the ideas going on in the writers' heads before that? And it's something I wonder if we'll ever find out about, or if they didn't really have any ideas and then he passed away and they're like, well, I guess we just have to figure out where we're going from here. M'Baku, just a little side note since I talked about him, in my opinion, he was just as good as the first movie. He's not really in there that much, but he's fun. He's a little bit of lightheartedness in a movie that has a lot of darker, a lot of sadder moments because of the loss. M'Baku's a nice injection of humor because of how well he handles some of these situations. I do like the sort of older brother relationship that he seems to have with Shuri now that T'Challa has passed on. Um, Ironheart. I don't remember her name. I want to say it's Reese, but I could be wrong about that. Her story felt very much one of those stories like I was talking about earlier that's building up for something else. And it just I couldn't really get invested because I didn't really understand what her point was for the story. She builds this machine that can discover vibranium, and then they go and find her to keep her from Namor, but then she gets kidnapped with Shuri, and then she builds another Iron Man suit, but it's Iron Heart now, and she fights in the final battle, and there's this weird, like, slow motion scene where she and Okoye are fighting, two warriors from the don't want to call them the Water Tribe, the Talakan people. I don't remember what they're called now, but they're both fighting at the same time, and they both have these heroic moments where they both win their battle at the same time. And I'm like, okay, we saw the fight between Okoye and the big buff dude earlier in the film, and it was badass. It was really cool. And so now they're having their battle again, but now Okoye has the suit because she's willing to trust Shuri a little bit more and use her technology. So now the battle is a little bit more even. But for some reason, at the same time, why are we also watching Ironheart fight the right-hand woman of Namor? Like, why is that being intercut? What connection is there? And when they both win, it's supposed to feel like oh yeah, they both triumph. And instead I'm just sitting here going, why are we focusing so much on her as well as Okoye? Because I don't think there's that much of a connection. I don't know. It just seemed odd to me. Maybe somebody can explain what the connection was there. But yeah, her story, like I said, felt very much like an addition that's just kind of there to introduce her before we see her. I think she's getting her own Disney Plus show. So here she is. Now be excited for when she shows up again. And she was funny. She had some funny lines. She had some good moments. But really, her chemistry with Shuri was kind of the only thing that I found interesting, because everything else was just sort of there and bland. But her, I don't know if it's a friendship. I don't know if it's a romance. It's kind of hard to tell because I don't know. They didn't really play it either way. It was just sort of they had this connection and she was there to protect her and all that stuff. I don't know. It's hard to tell because they don't really. You never know nowadays. It feels like any character can suddenly now they're interested in guys. Now they're interested in girls on a dime. Just if you need more representation, you can do that as a writer now. Whatever. But no, like I said, their chemistry, the back and forth between them, I thought was enjoyable. But that is about all she had. Everything else was just sort of filler until her next outing. Same thing with Ross. Obviously, you expect him to come back because he did play such a big part in the first movie, but I mean, he's just sort of there. You find out apparently he used to be married to Val, who does show up in this film. We still haven't seen much of her since. God, what was the last time we saw her? Was it Black Widow? I can't remember now. But yeah, she's not really been involved. We've seen her popping up every now and then, but haven't seen her for a while. I think she's going to be involved with the Thunderbolts that's coming out soon, so that's probably why she's popping up here. Is like, oh guys, get excited for Thunderbolts, and that's kind of it. That's all I really got from their little story. Ross puts the Wakanda people on the path of whatever her name is, Reese, I want to say. But he puts them on her path and lets them know, hey, the CIA is looking into this. And then we find out they used to be married, find out that she's apparently looking for vibranium, Val is. And then she arrests him, and then that's kind of it. And I don't know what's going to happen next because it just sort of ends there. Okoye goes and saves Ross from being arrested, and that's it. So, yeah, I don't know. It feels like, because there was no post-credit scene in this one, it does feel like they should have maybe had one involving her so we can see what is going on with her and actually wrap up her story, because it didn't wrap up. It didn't end. It was there and it was never finished. So yeah, again, just that is my biggest problem with this film is that Phase 4 Marvel thing that they seem to not be able to pull away from. Like, just tell confined stories. You don't always have to be building up the next thing. I'm trying to remember. feel like there are a couple other things. Nakia comes back in this one. We see how good she is at infiltrating again, getting into Namor's palace and getting Shuri out of there. I did expect to see more of her. We do see, she had a kid with T'Challa, and we do get to see the kid at the end of this, and he's all grown up now because it's been, I guess it's been about 6 years since they had the kid, because 5 years with the snap. I don't know. But, nice moment, nice to see, yes, it's T'Challa. It's his son who's going to basically kind of become the next Black Panther probably in the future. I don't know. It was just a nice moment. And again, another feeling of a nice send-off for T'Challa and Chadwick Boseman in the same time. But yeah, Nakia, outside of that, she was fine. She played a role well. I thought they handle her very well because they show she seems kind of sweet and innocent at first, but when she gets into that mode of fighting and being an infiltrator, she is pretty intimidating. So I like watching her in action. The final thing to talk about, I guess, is the final scene, the final battle. A couple things about this that I'm still not really sure. It's been a few days since I've seen the film. I'm still not really sure how I feel about it. Because on the one hand, I liked how they handled the battle because we see Shuri wins. She has that moment where she's, it basically feels like she's beaten, she's been impaled, but then she finds the strength to get that off of her. A little weird that she recovered so quickly, but she gets back and then manages to take Namor down and has the chance to kill him. And then it's kind of that battle between, we saw her with Killmonger, which that scene I did forget to talk about. I liked that twist. I liked the fact that he was the only one there because that's where her mindset is she is in a very, I want to kill, I want to burn the world because it's taken so much from me. And Namor's now taken my mom, so I'm ready to take him down too. And then in that moment, when she has the chance to kill him, he's there again. That's it. It's in her mind, that moment with Killmonger, knowing that she's got to do what she's got to do. But then that's when her mom comes in, and that's when she sees her and she feels her and knows that she's still there with her. It's a nice moment. I feel like they handled that part of it well. However, the one part of it that I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about is the fact that they called a peace. It makes sense from the idea that you look at how the battle was going, and honestly, Wakanda was about to lose. Like, they were all on one side of the boat. They were being pinned in. They were about to die. And then Shuri manages to call a peace. Namor calls off his troops, and they're safe. So from that standpoint, it makes sense. However, from a movie and a storytelling standpoint, by the end of it, we see Namor hasn't really changed that much. Like, he's willing to call that peace, and he's willing to kind of go back to how things were. Wakanda is going to hide their secrets. They're going to stay underground again and not interfere. But he's not necessarily changed. He's still pretty evil deep down. Like, he sees this as Wakanda's going to get attacked again. People are going to come for their vibranium again. And when they do, we'll be here and we'll try this again. It just feels like, in that sense, it's going to happen all over again. It's still going to be, they're going to try to basically take over the world with Wakanda because they see everybody above ground as evil, and they're always going to be this way, and it's always going to be where they're going to try to take our stuff, so we're just going to be ready to attack them again later on down the line. But next time, Wakanda will be the ones requiring our help, and we'll do it again. I don't know. It feels like nothing's changed, honestly. Like, where we were at the beginning of the film with the Talakan people and where we are at the end of the film, it feels very much the same. It feels like we are basically unchanged, except for Wakanda is now without a queen because Namor killed her. So in that sense, I'm not a fan of that. I feel like it would have been better. I don't know. I mean, I don't expect Namor to just change his mind like that after what he went through. But I think it would have been better if they found a way either to, I guess, take Namor out of the picture without killing him and sort of show his people, like, look, this is not the way you have to live. You don't constantly have to live in fear of the people above ground. Try to basically help them in that way instead of just, all right, Namor, go back to your people, hide out again. We'll keep you secret. in my opinion, it would have worked a little bit better in that sense, just because it would have felt like something was accomplished instead of, again, everything just resetting. But yeah, so all in all, though, that's about all I can think of as far as this film is concerned. My thoughts on it as well. Obviously, it's been a few days, so some of it has left my brain. I'm not going to remember everything that happened. But obviously, if you have anything that you want my opinion of, please let me know down in the comments, and I'll give you my opinion on it. But all in all, I do think this is a pretty good sequel to what was one of the better Marvel films from the first set of phases. Because sometimes whenever you have these sequels, like you look at Thor: Love and Thunder, really didn't live up to the Thor movies that came before it, which honestly is not a good thing considering Thor 2 was so bad. But Black Panther was so good, and it was such a beloved movie. Chadwick Boseman was such a beloved actor in the movie, and so handling another movie after he's gone and after his character is gone, it was going to be tricky. It was going to be tricky to navigate that, to figure out how you're going to make it work, to figure out what story you're going to do that makes sense without replacing him as an actor, because you don't want to do that. It's disrespectful. It would piss a lot of people off. And I feel like for what they had, they did a good job with it. Again, not perfect. I still feel like those Phase 4 problems are popping up again, but I still had fun. I still enjoyed it, and I still thought it was a good movie overall. So, honestly, if they can continue to do that, at the very least, I feel like I'll be okay, because past couple things that I've reviewed from Marvel with Miss Marvel and Thor: Love and Thunder, yeah, it wasn't good, and it also had the same problems that this one did. So, yeah, let's hope that we get more of Wakanda Forever and less of Love and Thunder. Fingers crossed. But anyways, that's about it for me. That's all of my thoughts that I could think of for the film. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on the film? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Marvel reviews, and I'll see you guys, I guess, at She-Hulk probably next. Peace out.